Today's episode of Knoxville Medicine Doc Talk is sponsored by London and Amburn, attorneys at law, healthcare people, healthcare law. London and Amburn, attorneys at law, are proud to support the Knoxville Academy of Medicine and its mission to continue to improve community wellness in East Tennessee.
Hi, and welcome back to Doc Talks, where we describe different entities and diseases that affect the Knoxville community. It is sponsored by the Knoxville Academy of Medicine. I'm Elise Denaney, former past president of the Academy, and today discussing vaccines with us is my good friend, Dr. Stephanie Schultz. Hi and welcome. How are you?
Doing well, thank you.
Good. What is a vaccine?
A vaccine is a way to trick our body into thinking we've had that disease so that when we are faced with having to fight that disease, we are able to do so and not get sick.
So it prevents us from getting a disease down the road?
Yes.
If we get the vaccine?
Right.
Okay. Right now we're entering winter and everybody's talking about the flu vaccine. But before we go to that, how about we talk about vaccines for kids and what's the best for them?
Sure. We start vaccines at 2 months of age in our office. They may get a hepatitis B at birth. You can then start the regular schedule. We do a 2, 4, and a 6 month schedule at the beginning. And those vaccines are going to protect them when they lose their immunity. Around 6 months is when the immunity for mom kind of dwindles down. And so you're wanting to protect the child against those things that they may get from 6 to 18 months. We do see an increase in infections in children, and so you want to try to protect them before they get to that age. So that's why we start vaccines early on. And so that initial series at 2, 4, and 6 months will cover the DTaP, they'll get the H-flu, they'll get Prevnar, they'll get rotavirus, polio, hepatitis B. Those are the ones that we give in those initial 2, 4, and 6 month time frames. And then at 12 months, we pull in the MMR, the chickenpox, and the Hep A. And then at 15 months, you're going to do some booster doses of the DTaP, the Hib, and the Prevnar to continue with that immunity until they get older. And then at 18 months, we'll kind of pick up anything we've not gotten at that point. So usually by 18 months, most kids have had most of the early vaccines completed at that point.
Okay. You mentioned DTaP. What does DTaP stand for?
It's diphtheria, tetanus, and pertussis. So pertussis is the whooping cough.
Okay. Do we see that anymore?
Yes, we actually do, especially in populations that aren't vaccinated. There are usually around 3,000, maybe even more than that, cases in the United States every year of pertussis.
Okay. And diphtheria, that sounds like something from the 18th century. What is diphtheria?
It's an infection of the throat that causes trouble breathing, and the child is very sick. That is one that we don't see in this country anymore because we do vaccinate against it. But it can be very, very lethal.
And tetanus, that's the rusty nail thing, right?
Mm-hmm. Lockjaw. It basically just makes it so you can't move your muscles.
Okay. So what's the risk if I don't get vaccinated, or if I don't get my child vaccinated?
Then they have a risk of getting those illnesses that we're vaccinating against, and then they can also pass that to other kids who may not be old enough to get the vaccine. Because pertussis, we are the reservoir for children, and so those under 2 months of age who can't get that vaccine are going to be susceptible to the illness and get much sicker than those that are older.
You know, so there's like so many things that affect kids, and so we try to pick out the ones that are really bad that require a vaccine. Is it really bad if we would get tetanus or diphtheria or whooping cough? Is that really, really bad?
Yes, it can cause you to be so sick that you're in the hospital. Your child may die from those illnesses.
Right.
Pertussis is a very prolonged illness. It takes a long, long time for the child to get better.
And they may cough and get asthma and all that stuff afterwards. Right. Okay. So would you say the benefit? Well, what is the risk of a vaccine?
The risk of a vaccine is, anything that you put into your body, there is a risk of allergy. If your body is allergic to any part of that, which is very uncommon. And also, if you could get fever, you can feel bad. You can, with little kids, we see some irritability sometimes. The muscle will get sore. You may even have some swelling around it. For the most part, it's going to be minor things like that.
And that's okay.
Yes, it's normal.
Okay, so not much risk in getting it.
Right.
Yeah, not much. I mean, the vaccine doesn't give you the disease.
No.
Okay. So if somebody was trying to decide, do I vaccinate my child or not, and they're weighing the risks and they're weighing the benefits, I think that in this case the benefit outweighs the risk.
Definitely.
Yeah. And generally most health plans cover the vaccination. And you mentioned that sometimes a kid can pass it on to somebody else?
Right. It's an infectious disease, so coughing, sneezing, touching doors, any of those sorts of things. There's always going to be that prodrome of an illness where you're not so sick yet, but you're passing it on to others. And so, of course, when children get really sick from that illness, they're probably not going to be around a lot of other people because they're going to feel very bad. But the 24 hours before that, when they weren't feeling so bad, is the time frame that they're going to pass it to a lot of other people at that
They're
time.
infectious then. Is that why schools say you have to have your vaccines before you go to school?
Yes.
So that you don't pass it on to other kids in your classroom.
Right. And you have that herd immunity where, in any vaccine, not everybody responds to the vaccine. And so you're protecting other people's children as well when your children are vaccinated, because there's less of the disease in the community. And so those people who may not have responded to the vaccine are going to be protected as well.
So I've heard a lot of talk in the press recently about the association that vaccinations cause autism. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yes, I can. Autism is definitely not caused by vaccines. That has been disproven. And in giving vaccines for 23 years in my practice, it would be hard for me to continue to give vaccines to people if I knew they were hurting them or causing undue harm. And most of the time, autism is something that we see very early. You can, if you're watching for it, there are certain things that we do in our well visits to try to determine if your child has, developmental issues. And so most kids will present well before 6 months of age. You can tell that something more is going on there. And so autism is not one of those things that we see as a result of vaccines.
Unfortunately, the cinema industry and actors have gotten onto the bandwagon of saying that their child developed autism from vaccines. And the data just doesn't play that out correctly.
Right.
So I think it's a very good thing for children to get their vaccines. You also mentioned that up to a certain age, the child has immunity, meaning protection. So the child won't get the disease because they get that from mom until a certain age. And then after that age?
Then we're building immunity with the vaccines. That's why you give vaccines in increments. You can't make somebody immune just with one injection most of the time. So you give those initial series of vaccines to build immunity each time they get a vaccine, their immunity increases more. And then the boosters are to keep them immune longer.
Right.
So that you keep that immunity as you get older. So therefore you are going to be losing immunity from what crossed the placenta and the baby is born with is going to leave because it's not immunity that they created within their body. And so the vaccine allows them to create that slowly while their immunity from their mother is waning, then that will increase and then they'll be able to fight it off on their own.
I think I'm due for a booster myself. It's hard to remember when you have to keep up with all of your vaccines. It's really hard. Do some of them need a meningitis vaccine before they go to school?
We do, yes. You need to get meningitis before college. We do those generally in the adolescent population. We try to give the first meningococcal vaccine in 12, 13 years of age before 7th grade. At their 7th grade vaccines, we usually do a Tdap, a meningococcal, and we can start the HPV series at that time. And then you get another one before you go off to live in the dorm. At college, it's required.
Ah, that's a new one. What is HPV?
HPV is against the human papillomavirus that causes many types of cancers. And it is, if you get it before 15, you only have to get 2. If you get it after 15, you have to get 3.
Oh, good thing to get it before,
Exactly.
before 15. Human papillomavirus, that's like a virus. Okay. And so that gets passed between kids by...
It's going to be intimate contact, so more in sexual contact is the way that virus is.
And we can do something about that. We can prevent that from happening with a good vaccine. That is really good to know. So you mentioned all the vaccines that they get a little bit after they're born and keeping up with the timing. But once I get a vaccine, am I done?
No, no, no. We have to continue to booster some vaccines. Definitely have boosters. You get the Tdap booster every 10 years. We do give that booster at 7th grade, and then you will get it every 10 years from there. Like we talked about, the meningococcal vaccine, and there's also another meningitis vaccine that you can get later if you want to get that will help protect you against a different form of meningitis. So the well visits for all ages are very important because that we can catch you up on. We may find other issues that you may have. So those annual well visits, I think, are really important for a lot of reasons, vaccines being one of those.
Well, we're running short on time. I'm so glad that Dr. Schultz was able to join us this afternoon and talk about vaccines. Obviously, as you can see, it's a very difficult subject. There's a lot more to know about it. And if anyone else has any questions about it, where can they contact you?
Schultz Pediatrics. We're at 9142 South North Shore Drive.
Okay. Thank you so much for joining us.
You're welcome.
That's a wrap.
Today's episode of Knoxville Medicine Doc Talk is sponsored by London and Amburn, attorneys at law, healthcare people, healthcare law. London and Amburn, attorneys at law, are proud to support the Knoxville Academy of Medicine and its mission to continue to improve community wellness in East Tennessee.